Hello and welcome back to another episode of Only a Bag, an Italy travel podcast. I'm Nathaniel Mellor.
And I'm Darcy Melton.
And today we are talking about St. Nicholas's bones and the mystery of why they are so wet.
Yes, so if Santa comes to your house, perhaps you would like to skip this episode if you have kiddos listening, because there might be some info divulged that is secret Santa, top secret info.
Exactly. You might want to keep it under wraps.
Yeah. Ooh, that was a good pun.
Oh my God, thank you. I didn't even think about that.
That's clever. I like
If I
it.
thought of that, I felt it really clever. Before we get started, just want to say, well, one, actually, we will not be here next week. We are going to take a mini break while we go to Naples for a few nights and have some sort of fun somewhere else. And so we will not be here next week. We will be here the week after. We also want to say thank you to everyone who has been listening, who has been leaving reviews, who has been just following along. We deeply, deeply, deeply appreciate it. If you'd like to leave a review, you can do so wherever you listen to the podcast or follow along, same place. Spotify and Apple Podcasts seem to be the most popular. We also have our website, onlyabag.com, where you can find articles. You can also contact us there if you have any questions, comments, or concerns about your upcoming trip or anything else we talk about and you'd like to have any more information. We also have an Instagram at Only a Bag Podcast, where you can do the same. Contact us and say, hey, I have these questions about my trip. Last but not least, if you'd like to support the podcast, you can do so on Ko-fi, ko-fi.com/onlyabag, where you can send us a donation. Or if you'd like, if you're planning your upcoming trip and purchasing things like hotel rooms or trips via Viator or something like that, not trips, but what are they? Tours via Viator. Then you can also use our links in the description or on our website, and we get a small commission from the companies we link to. And it helps all support the channel. Plus, you don't get charged for those affiliate links. Those are just, I guess, we get a portion of their profit. So same price for you, a little bit extra for us, and then we can afford stuff. Yeah. I'm not a good salesperson. Wow. Don't make me sell anything, especially if I have. Please don't. So today.
So, now that the kiddos are gone.
Yes, there we go.
Nathaniel, would you like to say your not safe for work title that you wanted to title this episode?
What is it called? Santa's Wet Bones or Santa's Bone Juice 2026, 2025. This is one of those stories I stumbled across and I thought there's no way that's real. And then I thought it is, and we need to do an episode on it. Stat.
Yes.
Pronto. And it is essentially the premise of today's episode is, does Santa's bones that are currently interred in Bari, southern Italy, exude some kind of juice in which it's collected and sold to the people of this fair planet?
And the too long didn't read answer of that is yes. That happens.
That happens. This is the hard-hitting journalism here at Only a Bag. So let's talk about Saint Nick very briefly, because it's a story. And I'd like to set the scene of this story. Saint Nicholas, this is the Saint Nicholas of legend and lore. This is Santa Claus. This is Saint Nicholas. I don't know. I don't know another name for him. Born in Anatolia, in Turkey, what now is Turkey. Back then it was Greece. It is modern day's Antalya, if you ever want to go. There's still a church and a crypt there. A sarcophagus, whole 9 yards, still exists. And he was known as Saint Nick of Myra, which is, I think, a town kind of near Anatolia, or again, back then Anatolia, today Antalya. I'm going to say Anatolia to make it super simple. Back then it was Greece, and then it became Turkish, which will become important later.
Okay.
He was 5'5". That's just a fun little piece of information I learned, and I wanted to let y'all know that.
In fact, Nathaniel wrote in the notes, a 5'5" king.
He's a 5'5" king. Well, 5'5" and 3/4. So for anybody who's 5'5" or 5'6", and who may or may not be your father listening to this, saying life is difficult for short people, Santa Claus was your height.
Yeah.
And it was a great life, I think. Not really. He was imprisoned at a certain point. So it's a horrific life, actually. He had a broken nose.
St. Nicholas was imprisoned?
I know. Who would imprison such a fellow?
Okay.
It is a fascinating life. I'm not great at telling stories, apparently, because I'm already all over the place. And you might be wondering, how do you even know he's 5'5"? Well, fear not. In the 50s, I believe, they were restructuring the basilica in Bari, and it was the first time since he'd been transported to Bari in like 1078 that his bones had been moved. So for years, apparently local, well, not just local, but basically people would say, like, I'm doing a terrible job, but anytime there are religious artifacts, then there are people saying, hey, we'd like to look at these religious artifacts to see what they actually are. Like the cloth of this or the bones of so-and-so, because we want to see, is that even a human bone? Is it not? What is the cloth made out of, etc. So I think in the 50s, I want to say 1952, a scientist in Italy out of a university, I want to say it's a Pulian university, but it might be just some other university, got special permission to basically take the bones, photograph them, document them, do radiocarbon testing on them, basically do every possible test they could to figure out what these are. And that is when they found out that the bones measured somebody who's 5'5", who had, I believe, pelvic arthritis, as well as a skull arthritis, like a thickening in the skull that would have caused constant pain, basically.
Oh my
Not
goodness.
like apparently super high, but chronic constant pain. And that's, again, I mentioned they found a broken nose. They found other broken. Some of it is hard because obviously he had broken things that hadn't healed, and then some of them they broke in transit. So because, as we're going to find out later, these are stolen bones. Every good story starts with theft, especially every Christmas story. But we're already getting ahead of ourselves. I wanted to actually start with, interestingly, in old stories, it seems like they use 3 a lot. Like, it seems like a really good number, especially when you're like, there's 3 so-and-sos, 3 little piggies, 3 wise men, 3 Ninja Turtles. Actually, there are 4, but 3 for the purposes of this. So 3 is used a lot, right?
Yeah.
And except for, I guess, Ninja Turtles, so they use 4. But so it's 3 innocent men saved from execution. That was one of his early miracles. They were about to be executed. He basically went over and knocked the sword into the ground and then chastised a juror for accepting a bribe, which, again, not at all how a legal system should work, but I do love it. I absolutely love just going over the juror and be like, that was bad, dude. That was naughty. You're going on a list.
Exactly.
You were going on a list. 3 women who apparently their father lost. He was a wealthy man who lost his money through the work of the devil, which sounds like gambling, but they don't say gambling. It just sounds like gambling. And so his $3 was without dowries, and then they would have entered prostitution. Again, very not safe for work. Wow. Christmas stories here. Yeah. And so Saint Nick, for 3 nights in a row, just chucked a bag full of coins through the window. And then the father found it in the morning. And he was like, oh, a miracle. So he married off 1 daughter. Next morning, oh, second miracle, married off a second daughter. Third, I think he has stayed up late to catch Saint Nick doing this.
Oh my goodness.
I know. Like, every Christmas story starts with somebody staying up late to catch Santa Claus. Saint Nick was like, don't tell anybody. Keep this under wraps. Keep this shush. And then they finally obviously gave a 3rd bag of coins. And so the father married off the 3rd daughter and everybody went home happy, I think, is that story. I don't know. They did not follow up later. It wasn't like one of those MTV interviews. They follow up 20 years later with the 3 daughters. Be like, how is your life now? What do you think of Saint Nicholas? So I'm assuming things went well. And then, of course, this is what I found fascinating. He's the patron saint of many things, as you mentioned in Wednesday's episode of this small town in northern Italy. But he's the patron saint of many, many, many things. Thieves that have decided that thieving is not for them, whatever that word is called.
Like reformed thieves?
That's the one. Or repentant thieves.
Okay.
Other things, sailors, some type of traveler, but also children and brewmasters or brewing.
Can we give a trigger warning for this one?
We can give a trigger warning. I really hope the kids aren't.
Trigger warning for, what is it? Cannibalism?
Kind of, yeah. Like loose cannibalism, or attempted cannibalism.
It's very gentle, a very gentle one, but I just want to let people know.
I like that. So apparently there's a famine, and a nefarious local butcher in this town, decided to kill orphaned children, to pickle them, and to sell them as pork. Mm-hmm. That was also on a naughty list. So Nicholas made the sign.
Yeah, that person's on the naughtiest of lists.
So St. Nicholas made the sign of a cross, resurrected the 3 children. This was an amazing story, apparently. People love this story. This was like the story, right? Went around. Everybody was like, have you heard about the 3 kids?
This is a very intense story.
It's a very intense story. Yeah. And I guess back in the day, there's not that many stories to tell. So this was a good one. It had death. It had resurrection. It had good guys, bad guys. It had the whole 3. See, that number keeps coming up. Mm-hmm. Loved it. However, just like any story, when you keep telling it, people just cut to the end and they're like, just give me the good stuff. So all these painters were painting just St. Nicholas with 3 kids in a barrel. That doesn't really explain a lot of the story. So he became the patron saint of children when people thought erroneously that, oh, I keep seeing him in kids, he must be the patron saint of children. Specifically, English-speaking audiences, which make me think England, saw these paintings and thought, oh, that must be it. And then also people saw the barrel and thought, oh, also of brewing. So he became the patron saint of children and brewing, or being a brewmaster. Uh-huh. But they forgot that it actually was pickled children who were then resurrected.
All the other parts of that story.
Yeah, it got really just
people
smoothed
just saw
over.
The paintings, not the story that went along with it.
100%. And that story did that. That was everybody apparently had that in their back pocket. That was the story to tell at any sort of gathering. So he dies eventually from, old age. I think it was like 70 something when he died. Less than 200 years after his death, the St. Nicholas Church was built in Myra, which is interesting. I didn't realize, and maybe this isn't how it works, but it was basically called the Church of St. Nicholas. And one way to do that was to make sure that people would not forget his name. So you build a church with his name and talk about his stories. So that was one of the ways apparently back in the day you'd get somebody's name to, or some saint to continue being known throughout the years, if that makes sense. Yeah. And I thought that was fascinating because I didn't know that was the correlation. I just assumed it was unrelated. But no, in fact, the idea was to keep his name going, and he was the wonder maker and the gift giver and this and that. So they thought, hey, this seems like a good, solid chap to be known. So essentially, he was the bishop in his life in this area, and this specifically at this site. I think the church that he was bishop in fell down, collapsed, was destroyed, and they rebuilt the church and then interred his remains in a sarcophagus underneath that church. So sort of like never far from home is kind of the vibe I get from that. In Myra, his bones exuded a clear substance, thought to be some kind of oil. It is called manna, M-A-N-N-A, manna, I'm not really sure.
I think people pronounce it both ways.
Fantastic. I'm going to say manna because in video games they pronounce it manna and they use the same thing. Or myrrh, I guess like frankincense and myrrh, which I didn't think was the same thing at all, but it might be.
I did not either. Okay.
It is reputed to have healing abilities. It is incredibly unclear if people would dip themselves into the oil or drink the oil or rub the oil on themselves. Or just be near the oil. Very, very unclear.
It was a long time ago.
It was a long time ago.
Okay.
And then so after the Great Schism in the church, I did not know about this Great Schism. I learned about it mere moments ago. But I think I learned about it once, but it was essentially where the church split into the East and the West. So the Orthodox Church in the West and then the Catholic Church in the other way around. The Orthodox Church in the East, that's why it's called Eastern Orthodox, in the East, and the Catholic Church in the West.
Okay.
And then, so after this schism, I believe it's called the Seljuk Turks invaded what was then sort of part of Greece and is like loosely part of Greece because historically it was not part of Greece at all. They just colonized it.
Right.
So they sort of reinvaded, for lack of a better word, invaded. And it was assumed, I'm putting this in quotation marks because it was assumed that they would be, maybe destroying all these holy relics or whatever it is. So a group of sailors and merchants took it upon themselves to sail from Bari when they had heard about this invasion, to sail from Bari to Myra to rescue the bones of St. Nick. The Orthodox monks at the church did not feel as if this was rescuing so much as blatant theft.
Right.
It is pretty much widely agreed, excuse me, I just hit the microphone with my gesticulating, that it is blatant theft. To the point that actually the Turkish government has asked for the bones back because they're like, those are ours, you stole them, please give them back. And actually the Orthodox Christians of both that church and that region have asked for the bones back because like, our bones, you stole them.
For sure.
Hilariously though, not the only ones. The Venetians also heard about this invasion, sailed basically soon afterwards, got there a little bit later, and the Barian Italians, the Italians from Bari, only took the big bones. So not all of the bones, they just left a lot of the smaller finger bones, toe bones, teeth, other bits and bobs. And so the Venetians came and took all the bones as well as some other bits of rubble because little bits of the marble rubble had fallen in with the bones. So they just sort of swept it all into containers and brought it back to Venice. But that's not where our story takes us. I will say, actually, on a fun little note for Venice, it is said that somebody dies every time the bones in Venice are disturbed. So they have not been touched since 1992, which I think is, interestingly, for whatever it is, I guess even people are like, yeah, we're not touching them. We're good. We're just going to assume that's for real and not worry about it. However, they did anatomically study the bones with, I guess, science. I wish I knew more about science because it does feel a little bit just hand wavy to say with science they studied this, but it is from the same person, and basically the bones of Bari and the bones in Venice are of the same human being.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so they're anatomically the same person, which is or genetically the same person, which I thought was fascinating. So the story of the Bari sailors and merchants and the Venetian sailors and merchants is true. They did go to the same place and take bones of the same person. I thought that was fascinating. So now we leave Venice. In 1089, 2 years after the Bari merchants returned to Bari, I don't know if there's another word for Barian. I don't know. I apologize. I keep saying Bari.
Barinese.
Barinese,
I don't know.
yeah.
I don't know what they're actually called.
the Pope at the time inaugurated the Basilica of St. Nicholas in Bari. So he went from St. Nicholas
So
in
that
Myra.
Pope was on board with this theft?
Oh yeah, 100%. Well, to be fair, they were like, we're not really stealing from, other Christians. We're stealing from the Orthodox. We're Catholic, different
right,
church.
they were against
There was a
them.
schism.
Okay.
They didn't really care too much. They were just like, it's ours now. Thank you. You did a great service, and et cetera, et cetera.
Okay.
And they changed their name from St. Nicholas in Myra to St. Nicholas in Bari. Same St. Nicholas. Nick was not a very popular name. There's only one, apparently. So, moving forward, as I mentioned, this was widely seen as a theft. Bari said, no, it was a rescue mission. It has created some bad blood. But I thought it was interesting kind of moving forward in time. He wasn't a very popular saint in Western Europe. He just, the story, like again, the three kids in the cask, that wasn't a big story. And it was massively popular in Eastern Europe and in Turkey and this and that. Not at all in Western Europe. And in fact, he only became popular because of the Crusades. When soldiers or people or whatever it was were leaving for the Crusades, a lot of them left through Bari. That's one of the reasons that Bari became such a powerful city.
Interesting.
And well, the saint that they preferred was nowhere around, and they wanted to touch some saint's bones before going off to war, I guess. So it was kind of like Doc in a Box, like the little immediate med, but of saints. There was like, what's the closest saint you have that I could touch to get blessed? And like, we have one here, St. Nicholas. And like, great, that'll do. We'll go to St. Nicholas. So they touch the bones, they rub it on themselves. One guy carved off a little piece of his pelvis to take home.
That's not cool.
It's like so-and-so of Normandy. There's a bit, I'll get into that in a second. There's this St. Nicholas has been
stealing people's bones.
I know, right? St. Nicholas has been chopped up into a bunch of little pieces over time. Poor little Santa Claus is just all over the place, quite literally. But they would also this oil, this liquid. One of the miracles of this was when they took the bones from her, because they found the bones. They say was floating. They say these sailors say they were floating in this liquid, right? And I'm like, how much liquid is there that bones are floating? Because I'm thinking like a bathtub. It's a sarcophagus. It's like a bathtub full of liquid, or is it just like
an inch?
An inch. Floating is a very loose term. No idea. Very unclear. Nobody bothered to write it down when they were looting this church. So in Bari, though, they would take little vials and mix it with water, because nobody gets a full vial of full strength St. Nicholas water. And they would give it, and these crusaders would wear it around their neck, mostly to ward off like evil spirits and they say like the plague kind of thing, like they don't want to get sick, I guess. Yeah, okay. So that was, again, the sort of healing properties. I guess as long as you're near this water, you're good, you're covered, you're fantastic. So basically they just needed a blessing. But then when they had gone back home after the Crusades, they brought like St. Nick protected me. So all of a sudden these shrines and this sort of faith to St. Nicholas started popping up all over Europe, becoming popularized.
Interesting. Okay.
And my understanding is, and this goes more about St. Nick than anything else, it's just less than it's just about St. Nicholas, is after the Reformation, apparently, really like not one of the popular saints, right? He just sort of died in popularity. Just nobody really cared, except in Holland, which is where he was attached to essentially Christmas.
Okay.
And it was the Hollanders, the what is that word? People from Holland are called Danish, right?
Sure.
Anyway, the people from Holland who went to specifically New York City brought over Santa Claus, and that had a huge popularity in America. But it was interesting just because it again hit this point where it really died and is only kept alive through one tradition, specifically around Christmas, not around, I don't know, anything else. Yeah. Kids and traveling and seafaring and brew making. But on May 9th of every year, the clergy of the church will collect the juice, the water, the liquid,
the bone liquid,
and they mix it with water and they sell it at their fun little stall. They have a shop where you can buy some.
So you too can have a little bit of St. Nicholas liquid.
100%. Yes, you can. So, which also brings us to the question of what is this? Is it water? Is it juice? Is it oil? Is it something else? In 1920s, I believe it was like 1929, they did allow scientists to do science on the water to test what it is. And it turns out it's water. Because a lot of people over time said partly is because in this basilica, it's actually below sea level. So they claimed in Bari.
Okay.
So they claimed it's actually seawater seeping in drop by drop. So over the course of a year, it's a bunch of seawater in this tomb. Not a bunch, but enough that it's liquid.
Yeah.
And so it's just seawater they're selling. Other people said, no, that's not it at all. It's actually above sea level. It's just when it rains, the rain will seep down. Either way, it's apparently almost pure water. So some people say that's actually evidence of incondensation, because it's just would, I guess, water would condensate and rise and collect and then turn into pure water. Again, science, not my strong suit, people. I'll be honest. I don't know why I chose the sciencey one to talk about. And I found interesting on the actual website for this church, they make it clear that they're like, we don't really know what it is. We don't really we're not saying this is miracle juice. However, it is technically touching the bones of a saint, because so it is by maybe it
is
doesn't
by
come
proximity.
exactly
A relic.
Maybe it's not coming from the bones, but it's certainly touching the bones, and therefore it is by proximity a relic. So they do sell it for that, but they make it clear like this isn't like don't worship the bone juice of Santa Claus is a big thing. But I found fascinating. Yeah, it's strange. But I did find curious, the two other notes is one, a team out of Oxford ended up looking at the bones of St. Nicholas. There's some bones in France. And they looked like 2007, 2002, something like that. And they ended up looking like radiocarbon thingying and the whole, again, science. I wish I knew more. I read the words and I didn't understand them. And so they basically did all these tests and found like, oh, like usually, and they were very clear, like this is the oldest set of bones you've ever tested. Like usually we test them and it's supposed to be some saint who died, 2,000 years ago, and it's somebody who died 400 years ago, which is so old, but not the same. But this is a guy who died, in, I think of something, whatever it was, 1,500, 1,600 years ago. It's like, that's,
wow, yeah.
Seems to be right time period. His death was recorded. There was a couple different historians at the time because he was a popular figure in his own life, which helped a lot.
Right.
Even though a lot of his early life is gone, and there was very few, like nobody was really writing about him in the life. He was still popular enough that people knew of him. I guess if that makes sense. Apparently, the whole sort of somehow the Holy Roman Empire also got involved in when there was all these sort of changes. A lot of the records of his destroyed, so it was a bit hard to figure out like exactly what was happening. But what I found fascinating was just simply that they're like, yes, this is. The bones seem to be this old person. And then when I want to say recently, like 2024, a scientist out of Madrid who specializes in 3D facial reconstruction was just reconstructing the face. Again, it's kind of doing what they did in the 50s, which the guy was doing by hand in the 50s, basically trying to build out what the face would look like based on the broken bones and the fact that this guy had eaten a mostly vegetarian diet, going by his teeth, and was sort of imprisoned under Diocletian, I think. Under Emperor Diocletian, he was imprisoned and then beaten. And then under Emperor Constantine, he was released. So,
wow, goodness.
They also said something about how, like, you could tell from his bones that he was kept in a dank, dark, humid prison. And I don't know, like, how what would happen to the bones if you're. I'm like, because it's very wet inside my body all the time, so I don't know what would happen if they meant more like. It was just sort of, you could tell that that's what gave him arthritis.
Right.
Very
I imagine
unclear.
you could tell if someone had things that affected their bones, like if they were shackled or if they were sitting a lot of the time, or something like that. But I don't know enough to know if you would know why would this place be like dark and dank, humid? How can you tell humidity? I don't know.
Me either. And that is literally all I have found. And to be fair, I think it's not a very well-known thing, but it's well-known, but you can.
That's a very intense story.
It's a very intense story. Well, also, to be fair, the story of St. Nicholas is not like, man, the cheer did not come until much later.
Yeah.
I know you just talked about Krampus, which is, I think this was like, it was all.
I mean,
all
clearly
not cheery.
St. Nick and Krampus have stuff to talk about.
Clearly.
I mean, they're both a bit dark, their histories. So.
Yeah. No, but I thought it was fascinating because I keep now, of course, when I look it up, it was like in the last week, there's like a CNN travel articles and this and that articles on like, is Santa really buried in Italy? Can you buy some of his, I don't think they use bone water. I think they use something else. I think they use myrrh or something like that. But that doesn't sound nearly as interesting as bone water from Santa Claus, which is just a fascinating thing that exists in this world.
Wow.
So you too, dear listener, could
own a little piece of Santa Claus.
Yeah. And next time you visit, if you happen to be visiting Bari, which I know some people do on their trip through Puglia, you can visit the Basilica of St. Nicholas, and they will, San Nicola is what it's called. And they will, I guess there are tours, and I don't think you can visit the crypt specifically, or I don't think you can see the bones, unfortunately.
Okay.
Which would be so much cooler.
I kind of assumed you could, because there are a lot of saints in churches in Italy that are in a glass sarcophagus.
Exactly.
Or at least one wall is
glass
so that you can see their bones.
Very Sleeping Beauty-esque.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm surprised that you can't see his bones.
I know. I think it's partly because underground and partly, it's a little bit of mystery around it. I also mentioned, I think earlier I said, I'll get back to that later, and I never did. When I was talking about chopping up the bones, it was something the clergy people did for a while is they would chop up the bones and give pieces to different people as gifts.
That's weird.
It's
Sorry,
weird.
that's judgmental.
But
I
it's also
apologize.
like apparently their way of, again, spreading the sort of gospel of Saint Nicholas. So it was their
Okay.
way of essentially saying like, well, if you have this piece of a saint, you'll naturally be more likely to share it with people in your small town wherever you're from. So that was their way of sort of spreading the gospel, was like literally spreading
The
the
saint
body.
around.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So it's fascinating, but there are still bigger pieces left. But it seems to be, because the one in Venice does not do the
Oh, that's right. You
leaking.
said that off mic, I think, that the bones in Venice that are definitely a part of the same body, they don't weep this
They do not weep.
liquid.
Yeah.
Liquid.
If I did not say that in this episode, I apologize. That was the big thing, because the Bari sailors were so happy to find that it still did this, and it was still like this restorative, rejuvenative.
And his body has done this since
Yeah.
it was in what is now Turkey. Anatolia?
Yes. Yeah. Well, yeah. Antalya, I guess, now.
Thank you.
Something like that. I'm not sure on the pronunciation, but I thought that was a fascinating little story.
Absolutely insane.
Just in time for Christmas. So while you're enjoying happy festivities and gift giving and wonder making, that
And waiting for the ethereal St. Nicholas to
Yes.
hop down your chimney, here is where his actual bones lie.
exactly. I think that was the full circle I meant to make. Yep. And there we are. Thank you all so much for joining us on this. It was an adventure. We didn't learn as much as we did in the yesterday's
learned a lot.
Wednesday's episode, but
It was
yeah.
interesting and dark. And we will see you after our holiday break.
Absolutely. And we hope you enjoy this episode.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. Happy holidays. We'll talk to you next time. Tanti abbracci.